Thus, the great question facing this generation is whether it's enough to just rely on the last part of the Second Amendment and ignore the first, which states a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state.
So the right of the people to keep and bear arms clause of the Second Amendment really takes us back to the purpose, which is a free state to be secured through a militia. The right of the people to keep and bear arms, therefore, is what is necessary to maintain that kind of militia structure.
The founders were concerned that government, particularly the new federal government in Washington, be able to be kept in check by state militias, by the militia of the people.
Would the founders write something into the Constitution that had no meaning, purpose, or effect? The Supreme Court asked this same question in Marbury v. Madison and concluded that it cannot be presumed that any clause in the Constitution is intended to be without effect. In fact, the Supreme Court asked and answered this question in 5 additional cases. For example, in Williams v. United States, the High Court found, in expounding the Constitution of the United States, every word must have its due force and appropriate meaning, for it is evident from the whole instrument that no word was unnecessarily used or needlessly added.
The law is what it says, and it's meant to be taken at its word, and one can never presume that there's some provision in a law that was meant or ought to be disregarded. Now, people sometimes say, well, there are provisions in the Constitution that are somehow out of date today. Third Amendment, about the quartering of troops in private homes. But who's to say that that type of abuse would not arise today, and some public officials would try to quarter troops in private homes?
When I argued the case that if you want to go to war in committee, Foreign Affairs Committee, if you want to go to war, you have to have a declaration of war, and made them vote on that. Of course, they wouldn't do. They said that part of the Constitution is anachronistic. So it's that attitude that has to be addressed. What about the monetary issue? They don't follow the rules on the monetary issue. So you could rewrite and deal with the imperfections and try to improve it, but it's the attitude of the people and the attitude of our representatives about the respect for the rule of law that has gone badly.
So, if the Founding Fathers acknowledged the necessity of a militia in the Second Amendment, and the Supreme Court ruled that every clause is intended to have effect, how can we ignore the idea that a well-regulated militia is necessary? Maybe we simply don't understand what the militia is or why they are necessary.
The militia of the several states differ from other institutions like the standing army, police, and other organizations in community defense in that they are a constitutionally mandated body of the people in arms. Much like the jury, do you only trust the people themselves with judgment over their fellow man? Do you also trust the people themselves with their own security, with securing a free state? And as the Constitution makes clear in the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia is necessary for the security of a free state.
Perhaps the best way to describe the militia is to begin with an explanation of what it is not. The militia is not the Army, the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force, or even the troops. It's not the National Guard, Coast Guard, or the police. It's also not some vigilante group, UN peacekeepers, or NATO. A militia is a citizen-based state institution of self-defense, similar in spirit to volunteer firefighters.
The Army of the United States exists by sufferance of Congress. The Navy of the United States, if we have a Navy in the United States, exists by the sufferance of Congress. The militia of the several states are not such. Their very existence is not even dependent on the Constitution of the United States, let alone the sufferance of Congress. So they have an independence and a locality. They are the original instruments of the exercise of the sovereign sword of the people of the United States.
Philosophically, the militia could be said to have originated 2,000 years ago with Mark 12:31 in the New Testament. Love thy neighbor as thyself. With this comes the idea of self-defense and the obligation to protect loved ones as well as citizens of the community.
In both Testaments, the Bible is replete with examples of good, godly men and women who resisted evil, wicked government, sometimes by force.